Welcome to Get a Word In, a podcast about content marketing. I'm your host, Adam Walker. I'm passionate about sharing stories and knowledge through content, especially in the form of podcasting. In fact, I co-founded Edgewise.media, a podcast-first marketing content agency. On this show, I interview content marketers at some of the top companies in the world and discover what's working for them, what isn't, and most importantly, what's next. So stay tuned and get ready for some great content about content marketing. My guest on the show today is my friend, Rachelle Kuramoto. Rachelle, welcome to the show. Let's start with who are you? What's your title? What do your days look like?
Hey, Adam, I'm so glad to be here with you. Okay, so name, Rachelle Kuramoto. Title, Vice President of Brand and Content for Dragon Army. And what do I do each day? It is a mixed bag, Adam. Most of my day is consumed with brand storytelling. And I do that both on behalf of our clients as well as on behalf of our agency. And really, I guess storytelling is probably selling it short. It's more activation. So I'm really thinking about, how are we and how are our clients showing up in the world? What are they saying about themselves? Is it honest? Is it right? Is it good? And, helping to make sure that, we're resonating where we need to resonate with the folks we need to resonate with so that everybody can get done what they need to do.
I love that. Well, speaking of content and showing up in the world, let's talk content marketing, because that's why we're here. And you're an expert. So related to content marketing, tell me what is working right now.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. When we started 2022, we did a trend piece like so many folks, tend to do. And we looked at the trends we thought were really going to be super sticky in 2022. And I think we were mostly right. And, what we had kind of predicted was, QR codes, different ways of creating portals into content for people so that the content became a bit more experiential, that would be something that's important, especially as we get more and more accustomed to living and interacting and working in digital spaces, right? We've gotten very comfortable with that. So QR codes, video, but not super polished, overproduced video, really very authentic, real people being people kind of video. To that end, UGC, I think user-generated content continues to be something that is really important. And, it's interesting, and I'll touch on this in a second, but the areas where influence is influential is a little surprising. And then, the other piece is really the personalization and the honesty of the content. So that goes with the UGC, that goes with, slightly less produced video. I think honesty is kind of the name of the game. So this is where we started 2022. We are barreling toward 2023.
Yeah, we are.
I think that what I would say is we were right about some of that. We were not right about some of that. I do think that ways of making content more experiential remain very relevant, almost to the point of ubiquity, and we're not really thinking about them anymore. So, right. I think that QR codes are just sort of everywhere, and it's kind of like, it is what it is. They do what they do, and we're not noticing them. I do think that, honesty is still the policy. What I think is interesting is that influencers are less influential, that we're being more careful with who they are. It is leaning more into that honesty, authenticity. So, there was talk already about micro and nano influencers. And, I think we're seeing that. But for example, we're working with some communication efforts that are in the civic area. And I would never have thought that engaging influencers to talk about civic and not political, but more voter related issues
Mm-hmm.
how important they would be, but how careful we're all having to be. We're seeing clients thinking about their content, not in terms of which one of these trends, which one of these content approaches is right, but how do we engage all of them so
Mm-hmm.
that what happens is they're hearing that voice consistently through video,
Mm-hmm.
through print content, through radio content, through what they might be seeing coming out of UGC and
Mm-hmm.
influencer content in their social, right? Because that's still a little bit curated, but so careful, to be honest. So
Yeah.
we're seeing lots and lots of touch points, and actually a bit of a return to more traditional content mechanics as well, radio. It's been fun. It's been a fun year of really, we live very much in the web space at Dragon Army. And by
Yeah.
web, I don't necessarily just mean websites. I mean the web environment.
Right.
And, multi-channel is really, it's really been fun. It's
Yeah.
been a little bit
Yeah.
unexpected.
So I want to dig in for just a second. You mentioned
Yeah.
several times honesty. Is
Yeah.
that do you mean authentic, or is there something else, some other nuance to that? You mean, because when I think of content, I usually think of authenticity. I don't
Sure.
normally think of honesty. So what's the difference there, or how do you think about that?
I think that the word authenticity has been a bit co opted. I think that people use it, not everybody, but I think that there are some people and some brands that have begun to use authenticity as a veil, or as a lens. And it's a little bit of a, hey, I'm being authentic here. So just go ahead and believe me, right? And right. And I think in many cases they are, but we have learned over the last few years about virtue posturing. And we have learned a lot, you know, because we have been able to step behind the screen more than ever since the advent of the internet, I think, where people have been able to still sort of curate authenticity. But boy, I tell you what, when a brand shows up with honesty, you know, because brands are not presentations, brands are relationships, brands are conversations. And you can show up as authentic, but you can't necessarily use that to have an honest relationship, an honest conversation. And that is where I think the brands that are doing well, showing up with courage, the Patagonias of the world, they are being honest to themselves. They are using their voice honestly. They are acting on, their beliefs honestly.
Hmm.
There's a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So, all right. So next question, I want to move over to what's not working. I think you already kind of alluded to this. You said influencers are
Mhm.
less influential. So I'm curious if that's the direction you want to take this answer, or if there's other things that you see that are not working right now.
Yeah, I think I want to stay away from that just because it is not as much my wheelhouse as, it
All
is
right, that's
for some
fair.
content creators. But I would say what's not working, and I want to be careful with this, is sort of being a little bit of a stutter step with your content, being inconsistent with your content, thinking that, you can just be inconsistent and not plan ahead and not repurpose and not think about all of your channels. What doesn't work is when a brand thinks that, hey, we're just going to do what we're doing, show up once a week on LinkedIn, and, we're going to say we're subject matter experts and that's going to work.
Right. Yep. That's kind
That
of like
doesn't
the
work.
old blogging mantra, right? It's like, but we have a blog that we have
There's
posted
one.
on twice in the last year. Like that's all that we need, right? Just that blog. It's there. We're good, right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so this is not a groundbreaking answer, and
Yeah.
it's not a new answer either. What doesn't work is a lack of investment. And by investment, I really mean an investment of thoughtfulness, an investment of time, an investment in knowing your channels and how they work and planning. I like to talk with our clients, about think once, use wisely, and right. You don't have to think once and put it over here on a blog and then think again and put it over here on Instagram and think again and put it here on your podcast. Think once, put it in all of those places. This is not groundbreaking stuff, guys, but like it's just not happening. And when it doesn't happen and people are like, well, the metrics aren't great. Well, you know what? Let's tie everything together and shake it up and see, see what happens.
Yeah, that's right. That's perfect. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. All right.
You're letting me stand on a soapbox, Adam.
Yeah. That's it. Well, I mean, consistency is the thing, right? Like to do good marketing, you have to have good content. To have good content, you have to have consistent content. Like that's the methodology, and anything less is going to be subpar. It just is always. So
right.
Okay. So now I'm curious, what channels are you seeing traction on? I mean, I know you work across a lot of channels. I know that your specific preference is towards writing in the written word, which I very much appreciate. But talk about channels that you're seeing good content traction on.
So I think that obviously writing, you're right. That is where I mostly live. It's what I love. And I'm lucky to be able to do a lot of that. Interestingly, I think that streaming audio, places like iHeartRadio, are really interesting. It's a really great opportunity to pack a whole lot of messaging into a short amount of time. With a 30-second ad, what you can pack in from a messaging standpoint is astonishing. And then you can do some really sophisticated targeting and segmentation. And then you can really do some interesting on-site banner ad. And, there's a lot of ways in which you can take a singular message that is really powerful and put it together in a way that is really compelling, and then really throw it into the world in a way that is super targeted. And the metrics are phenomenal. So you can iterate really intelligently.
Yeah, I love that. All right. So you're the first person that's actually mentioned sort of ads related to audio streaming, which I kind of love. You really make me want to go run some ads, but that's a whole nother podcasting conversation. It's a whole other thing. All right. So I'll finish with this last question, which is a difficult question, but it's one of focus. So related to content, if you had to focus on only one thing, like one type of content, what one thing would you double down on above everything else?
Because I love it the most. I think if I had one type of content that I was going to double down on, it would really be I want to be careful with my words here, sort of a visual, an expert-based content. So what do I mean by that? Kind of a visible expert-based content, bringing to the forefront. Here's why I'm trying to be careful with my words. I don't want to use the phrase thought leadership because it's overused and because people think they're thought leaders and, they spew stuff probably like I'm doing right now. And, it is sometimes useful. It is sometimes, just hubris.
Yep.
I think that if you have people within your organization who might be sitting behind a screen, they might be sitting behind a desk, they might not be people who are necessarily out front sharing what they know, but they are in possession of such depth of knowledge and experience about what they do. And you have a content creator who says, wow, you have something really, really valuable to share. Yeah. I can help bring that out. Leaning into that is so valuable. One, it allows your organization to convey its capabilities through its people. And how amazing is that? Because then the people feel valued.
Right.
Their expertise is highlighted and they get something to be proud of. So it's, from a culture standpoint, it's wonderful.
Right.
From a capability standpoint, it's a great way of almost taking a vertical slice into a specific capability and going deep into it in a way that answers the two big questions we always want to answer when we're putting content into the marketplace. Is it useful? And is it interesting? If you have a visible expert, exactly, you're going to be useful and interesting to others. And then you're probably also going to get unique content that, to go back to our earlier point, can be, segmented out and made channel useful for a soundbite, a LinkedIn post, whatever. So that is where I would lean. Yeah.
I love that. All right. So Rachelle, I like to wrap up these conversations with kind of a summary from my notes. So if you don't mind, I'm going to just roll through the notes that I've taken. And at the end of that, you can tell me if I missed anything or add any thoughts to it. For what's working, you mentioned that QR codes, creating portals into content to make it more experiential video, but not super polished video, but more honest, authentic video. User-generated content, personalized and honest content. And we talked a little bit about honesty versus authenticity, which is similar, but authenticity is more easily faked, which I totally get. And you mentioned also a consistent voice across all channels. So there's lots of touch points, but there's a singular voice from the brand. And that is, I think, probably timeless and always going to work. For what's not working, you did mention that influencers are less influential, but we didn't focus on that because that's not your particular area of expertise. But you said inconsistent with content because of a lack of planning or a lack of repurposing is a problem that you see. And in particular, you mentioned a lack of investment never works. So assuming that a minimal investment into content is going to work, it's just not going to work. It's not enough. A drop in the bucket doesn't get it done. For what channels are working, of course, you're going to be focused towards writing, and I very much appreciate that about you. But you did mention streaming audio, in particular running ads on iHeartRadio and being able to pack a ton of information into a 30-second message and targeting those ads towards very specific audiences. And then for focus, you said expert-based content, which I really like. I haven't heard the term expert-based content before, but I like that better than thought leadership, actually, much better. So, and you said that because organizations have experts in them that have an amazing amount of content and knowledge, and that can be pulled from them or driven by them into creating great content. And you gave us sort of two lenses to look through related to that. Is it useful and is it interesting? And if the answer to those is yes, then this is probably pretty good content. So did I miss anything in my summary there?
No, you did a wonderful job. I should have just let you do it. We'll just have the Adam podcast.
No. I just take the notes. That's all I got. I take the notes. Do the recaps and take the notes. Well, this was great. Any final thoughts you want to share about marketing content? Oh man, I forgot the topic for like a half a second there. That was too bad. Any final thoughts?
Any final thoughts about marketing content? The only thing I would say is it is always better to speak with than to speak at. And if you take one thing away from listening to this, that useful and interesting are always going to win you friends.
And that's the best takeaway right there. So, Rachelle, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for joining me on the show today.
Oh, thank you, Adam. I always love chatting.
Thanks for listening to Get a Word In, brought to you by Edgewise.media, a podcast-first marketing content agency. To learn more about Edgewise, visit www.edgewise.media. I'm your host, Adam Walker. To connect with me, check out my blog at adamjwalker.com. Thanks for listening, and make sure to subscribe now so you don't miss our next great conversation about content marketing.